Mr. Chu,
Here.
Mr. Craig,
Here.
Mrs. Maya,
Here.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Here.
Mrs. Savarino,
Here.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Here.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia,
Here.
Mrs. Sherman,
Here.
Mr. Tavy,
Here.
Mr. Dilkus,
Here.
Mrs. Caden.
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. There is no executive session at this time, and our first presentation of the night, we are in for a treat. The Senior String Quartet is going to play for us, so I will leave it to them. So that was incredible, and we want to thank Ms. Carlson for all of her hard work, and the following senior students who were playing for us tonight: Amelia Bergstrahl, Regan Burke, Max Hess, and Finn Sullivan. Thank you so much. Getting to hear things like that is truly the best part of us having to sit up here in the first place. Why don't you, because I don't really know. Go ahead. Ms. Coleman's just going to give us an update about the agenda for those that might have
So
taken it.
I apologize. There was an issue in printing the agendas. The entire agenda is online, live, but it seemed we're missing pages of the agenda. So not on purpose. Everything is live on board docs and on our website. So I apologize. If everybody's going through the agenda and you start missing wholesale numbers, it's not you. There was a mess up in the printing, so I apologize.
Right, with that, the first copy of this that I had didn't have the page that had the presentations on it, so if you thought we were missing presentations, that's where it goes. We're going to switch over and go into Committee of the Whole for the other two presentations. So motion to enter Committee of the Whole, please.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. I'm going to, I guess, turn this 3.02 over to Beth Ann.
Actually, Matt. I think he was our appointed speaker this evening.
I volunteered.
You were voluntold, sort of.
In the December meeting, as we wrap up 2024 and prepare for the second half of the school year, it is our tradition to honor the service of our board members whose terms are ending. Out of respect for their wishes, I'll keep my comments brief. I could say a lot, but could not let this moment pass without acknowledging your hard work and dedication to our community. When I joined the board in March of 2020, Mary, Christine, and Reagan were three board members who I knew I could rely on for guidance and for answers to my seemingly endless questions. I've appreciated how much I've been able to lean on each of you for your support. Remain in all of your commitment to our schools and to the amount of energy that you've poured into this role. It's been an absolute pleasure serving with each of you. I'm honored not only to be here and present each of you with these plaques, but also just to have had the opportunity to work side by side with you in service of our students. And as a parent in our district, I just really want to say thank you. That being said, if I see any of you in the audience in the next year, I am going to tell you to go home respectfully. Thank you.
Thanks to our family cheering section over there for braving a meeting for us. Thanks, guys. Okay, with that being said, we're going to move on to even more fun topics, budget. Beth Ann is going to talk to us about the 2025 budget guidance.
Actually, I think Dr. McDowell. That's right. We're both probably, it's just a discussion. We rolled out budget guidance to the admins about a week to a week and a half ago, so we wanted to inform the board during Committee of the Whole and the public kind of what we rolled out and how we're going about the 25-26 budget.
So we will also, in the meeting highlights, we will also be sending all of the information. It's really important when we talk about investments in our schools, investments in our students, that we talk with great deals of frequency. And that we put in the greatest amount of planning as possible. And so the budgetary process for the 25-26 school year starts in September of 2024. We start with formal guidance that goes to school and district leaders in October. Technical assistance and further discussion and ongoing planning, review, and analysis takes place between December all the way through budget submission in March. And the goal is to make sure that we are appropriately aligning resources to our needs of our students and our schools. And so, in keeping with the theme for this current school year, shifting from recovery to rigor, we always want to make sure that we're being aligned with our vision and our mission. But we also want to make sure that we are removing systems and barriers that may be preventing students from getting what they need, schools from getting the resources and the support that they need as well. We also want to make sure that there's a great emphasis on effective teaching, as well as strong local site-based school leadership, as well as making sure that we're supporting our faculty and staff. And so we've heard many different names about budgetary philosophy, strategies, and approaches, but ultimately budgets are based on students. And so in a student-based budgeting environment, resources are allocated to schools based on achievement gaps, demographics, actual articulated needs, areas of focus for each individual school, and no school budget is the same because every single school has different needs, has different components that make that school unique. And so we want to make sure that our budgets accurately reflect that. And so from September to November, we discussed the budget cycle with all school and district administrators, and we're in anticipation for what some of the known quantities that we're going to be planning for. There are several unknown quantities that we will continue to put plans and contingencies in place, but we won't have the complete and accurate picture until sometime in February. And so December and January is really looking at the requests coming from schools in preparation for all of the revenues or all of the resources that will be available to be distributed come February, with final decisions being made and sent to the state back for their review in March. And then it comes back to the Board of Education in April for the board to be able to further scrutinize to make sure that it meets the needs of our school community, and then to eventually approve in the April board meeting. And so in terms of planning guidance, it's pretty simple. We make sure that schools first identify their priorities. Every school is going to have different priorities, but we want to make sure that that is a collaboration between faculty and staff in each school in order to establish key priorities for the 25-26 school year. It's also important in the spirit of transparency that schools communicate to their specific community what their priorities are and how they're going about making decisions. It's also important that we review and analyze student data. Data often tells a story, but it doesn't tell the only story. But data is extremely important if we're going to move towards academic achievement and proficiency for all students. We also want to make sure that we're aligning our staffing to the needs of students within their schools, and schools have the flexibility to take an individualized approach to how they're going to do that. We want schools to be places that focus on solutions, and we want them to be creative or innovative whenever and however possible. But we also want to make sure that, because this is a budgetary exercise, that schools are maximizing the resources that are available to make sure that students receive the most benefit from the resources that are available. We want schools to focus on student needs. We want them to prioritize academic achievement. We want student voice to be one of the primary drivers in how decisions are made at the campus. Not as easy at elementary, but significantly more easier to do at the secondary level, because the students are complex thinkers. They have strong desires, they have strong interests, and our goal is to make sure that all of our schools are engaging places where young people want to be. We also need to be cognizant of enrollment pattern shifts and changes. In years where we see increases in enrollment, that requires schools to make adjustments. In years where we see decreases in enrollment, similar adjustments must also be made. In addition to making sure that schools fundamentally understand that they have the flexibility to remove or adjust or add courses or programs that align to their school's specific strategies or academic goals. In addition to looking at discretionary spending and using it as an opportunity to enrich and supplement the learning experience for all students. We want there to be coordination and planning between departments so that we don't have redundancy or duplications in our spending efforts. which then translates into wasted dollars and missed opportunities for the young people in our district. And so one of the statements that we have used for the last several years is, when in doubt, accelerate, and when there is no doubt, innovate. We want schools to be places that push the boundaries. We are never looking for perfection, only progress. And so the budget priorities for the 25-26 school year from a district perspective are to improve the alignment of the administrative team, making sure that roles and responsibilities are aligned with our strategic goals and our objectives, actively engage our community continually around our infrastructure challenges, continue to identify strategies for adequate school funding and the advocacy needed both at the local, the county, and the state level, actively pursue additional revenues in order to support innovative student learning initiatives, and then commit to supporting and retaining our dedicated faculty and staff. In the areas of curriculum and instruction, continue to pursue with fidelity implementation of the science of reading. Improve the quality of teaching and learning by making sure that we're using effective curriculum resources, by making sure that we are building instructional leadership capacity in every school, and making sure that we are building district capacity to shift to becoming more inclusive schools at every level, while also providing targeted levels of support in literacy and mathematics. In terms of pre-K through 5 priorities, we are focused on increasing access to high-quality preschool seats for all Collingswood families. So until we get to universal levels, we still have work to do. We are currently in the process of planning for 4 additional classrooms in Collingswood, which will add 60 additional seats to Collingswood families of high-quality early childhood education. In addition to our elementary schools maintaining their infrastructures to support and sustain a quality multi-tiered system of support for students of varying needs. Grades 6 through 12, we're seeking to develop the infrastructure to support and sustain a robust tiered system of support for secondary students. In addition to implementation of our math curriculum with fidelity for improved outcomes in algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. And so we will be sending out, this is the same guidance that our school leaders are receiving. We believe that it's important for our community to all be on the same page about the challenges that we face and the opportunities that are present when we all come together. And that's the guidance.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. I imagine this will be I'm positive it will be an ongoing conversation for every board meeting from now until when the budget is due and beyond, but did want to open it up. It's why we went into committee of the whole if any board members had questions or thoughts that they wanted to raise. Wait, hold on one second, because he's leaving right now. I didn't want to say anything, and because I know most of the people don't really want to hear anything, but I've been looking over here and remembering how little all of these kids were when their moms started on this journey. Jonah wasn't even, who's the kid about to leave, wasn't even in school yet. My youngest kid wasn't even born yet, and the rest of them all the rest of them sitting there were in middle and high school, and pretty much almost all of them have graduated from high school now and are in college and beyond. So they had to deal with their moms doing a lot of extra work and dealing with their moms being on the school board while they were in school. So I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you to all of you for supporting us on this journey. You guys deserve a round of applause. Sorry, Jonah, you can go now. And now we can talk about the budget.
Sure. With the guidance, I would just ask that we put in the dates for the school funding conversations that Trenton is holding right now. For those that aren't aware, the conversation around the school funding formula is currently happening at the state level. They are taking feedback as they look to tweak, redo, address the
I was
gaps.
thinking, I had that thought today. Should I put it on the website? This way, if any citizen, I know a lot of people have come to the board meetings, like, to question school funding and ask, like, what the board is doing and what they can do. You can register to either attend and or speak. So I can, maybe
Yeah.
I'll send that to the tech department, maybe put it on the front page.
That would be great. I know
It's January, the southern one is January 16th.
Yeah, they're,
So-
so happening
All right, I'll do
across
that.
the state real opportunity for voices in communities like ours to be heard and really to express the fact that this is not the time to be cutting back on education funding. And it really needs innovative solutions, but really needs to be a area of focus, particularly at the state level. Thank you.
I had a question about something you said. You know, Dr. McDowell, you said that, and I appreciate this, that schools should communicate their priorities to their communities. So what could families and community members expect to hear from their school leaders about this process?
And so one of the things that it's important is that when changes take place at any campus, whether they be new, innovative, or if something is dissolving or no longer being done, it's important that when the changes come up, we have the expectation that all schools communicate what are the changes, why are the changes taking place, and what will be replacing said change. Or if there are new opportunities, what are the new opportunities, and how can families be involved, and what's that positive impact on the students in which we serve. And so school budgets are indicative of the localized needs, and so it's important that families in each of our schools understand how resources are being spent and ways that they can help to inform if there are unmet needs at their child's school.
I was also thinking for at least one of our board roundtables that would be continuing in the new year, probably 2 would make sense if we pace them out, topics around budget, particularly as we find out either state funding or we get deeper into the process and schools are talking about next year.
I think you've laid out clearly the benefits of building-based leadership and building-based budgets. So I don't think that, you know, the need to rehash that. I just had a question. Based on the information shared in terms of the data, I don't exactly know when that was, if it was 1 meeting ago or 2 meetings ago, and the stark contrast in terms of different schools and, you know, the outcomes of, you know, present at different schools. And I know that you said that, you know, like, this is a snapshot, right? So standardized testing only shows a snapshot. Granted, that's true. But this snapshot has been shown year after year after year, and probably decades, right? So while appreciative of the fact that building-based leadership, building-based budgets, how is the district going to support those schools that clearly need the extra supports? Because they do. So what are we going to do to kind of supercharge or those schools?
Good evening and great question. Thank you for asking that. So beginning, over the last 3 weeks, as Dr. McDowell said, we shared out this process and information with all of our leaders. They've begun digging into the process in order to submit a draft in the next few days here. And then immediately following the winter break and winter holidays, the weeks of the 6th and the 13th, I believe it is, I'll be sitting one-on-one with every principal, going just line by line through their budgetary plans, looking at last year's budget, projecting ahead to next year, perhaps even projecting ahead to beyond, and making sure that there is obvious direct correlation between student performance in the past and how we're planning for the future. And so I'm looking forward to those conversations with every building leader.
Just to follow up, but if there is more need in a building, which clearly it would appear that there is, and I'm using the word need because I can't quite honestly think of another word, but if more need is demonstrated in a specific building, is it possible to give more support to that building?
Most certainly. And so we would be looking at that from a couple of different perspectives, and in some cases these differentiated supports are already in place. So in some instances there are 2 interventionists in a building where there's demonstrated need. That's already in place, and there's no intent to shift or change from that. And then looking again at other kinds of targeted curricular models that perhaps we haven't considered yet and could be implementing at one or multiple places, et cetera. Those will be the types of processes that are either already in place and will continue, or that we'll be looking to going forward.
I have a question. As we continue to have these discussions, is there a way for us to get a sense of, out of the student achievement numbers, students who have spent most of their academic careers in Collingswood as opposed to students who come into the district at various times of their school careers? I think it would be helpful to know, I think differentiating some of that data would be helpful, considering we do have a lot of students who come into the district at various times of their academic careers, as well as leave. And then also for those populations that are not spending all of their time here, are there different support systems that we can put into place to support that population?
Any other questions on the budget guidance discussion?
Is there any sense from the state or anywhere where we might be landing in terms of state funding this year?
No. I'm sorry. Queen of the obvious. The articles I've been reading is the governor's doing like all these like town hall, going to everybody saying that he fully funded the formula. I think, which is why they're doing these town hall meetings, because, he's saying, I fully funded the formula, so hey, what's next? Like, what are your ideas? Of which we have many. Just because he thinks he fully funded it doesn't mean that he funded it correctly, in my personal opinion. But our enrollment is down slightly, so I'm anticipating flat state aid, if not a little bit of a decrease, because obviously they are supposed to fund based on the number of children that we report every October. So we are down. Actually, in both Collingswood and Oakland, we're both down a little bit. So I wouldn't expect a windfall, and I'm not expecting a windfall. I think, like I said a million times, our argument that I would like to make is that the 2% needs to move in line with CPI and some of the rising costs that Trenton passed on to the school district. That's the argument that I am planning to make. So.
And just to add to that, at the state budget level, they are not anticipating as much money being there as years past, and there have been steps already been taken at the state level to address that. So I think education still remains a priority, at least in words. So hopefully we'll see that in actions in terms of funding, but this will not be like last year, is a lot of what's being said.
Yeah, because just like us, they got ESSER money that has expired. So there are additional pots where they can offer all these specialized grants. That's pretty much all gone, I would imagine.
So you're saying that this coming year should be an improvement from last year, or no? Okay. All right.
And so that we should know end of February? From
Yes,
the
usually
state?
the governor speaks third Tuesday of February, and then within 48 hours he has to give us the state aid. So it would be the Thursday of that third week in February is typically when we get state aid. And then we have about 3 weeks to balance the budget and turn it over to the state by March 20th.
And also, so then right now, our kind of only method to raise revenue is either tuition from externally or
Tuition or tax levy, correct.
And tax levy capped at 2%. So that's 2% of like the $18 million or so that
It's
we get
about
in tax.
$373,000, $301.
Okay.
I've done the math. Yeah. Again, tuition, I'm still waiting. Our certified tuition rates will not be in probably till the end of January. So once our certified tuition rates are in, which tells me exactly, the state calculates exactly how much it costs per grade level, it'll then, that informs the finance committee on what we can charge in tuition to our neighboring districts, Oakland and Woodland, in the following school year. But I can't really start estimating that until they certify exactly what it cost per each grade level.
So currently our total budget's around 40.
The general fund's about 37 and some odd million, and then grants are about another almost 3 million.
And so basically, without knowing, let's just assume the state funding is flat. Basically, we're looking at maybe like $370,000 extra on that $40 million budget.
If nothing else goes up, yes.
Really quick, has there been any improvements in the post-COVID price spikes? Like, has transportations continued to rise? Are we making any ground there?
No. Transportation's leveling off. I'm just going to go on my soapbox now. My frustration is I sat on a committee of my state association, so just what you want to be in a room with 20 BAs that are angry. But it was 20 of us, and the accountability regulations that govern basically how we operate were up. They sunset in June, so they were up for renewal. They asked for comment from the people who do the work. So we went through page by page of 300 pages of statute, and we gave them feedback. They took none of it, but what we recommended was the 2% needs to slide in line with CPI. That was rejected. We also said for those cost drivers that are beyond our control, meaning child placed out of district at a private school for the disabled, no fault of their own, but Trenton sets those rates. We don't. So we're kind of captive to the rate that Trenton sets for the private schools. In addition, we're kind of captive to the rates that the busing companies charge. So two extremely big cost drivers in our budget we have no control over. Trenton needs to cap them in line with the 2% that we've been capped at for all of these years, because Trenton directly approves those costs and passes them on, right? They set the CPI for transportation. They approve the tuition rates. We're just expected to make up the difference every year, and it's getting increasingly hard at 2%. So they're being very tone deaf to what's happening out there, but it's suiting their narrative. So until people start screaming, people beyond me and board members like those who come to board meetings and understand this, but Trenton's very tone deaf that 2% on a tax levy, although in total it is keeping property taxes down, right? That was the goal. But services to children are starting to suffer. You can't arbitrarily hold property taxes low if your services are suffering. We still have the obligation to provide the services regardless of how we generate the money or get the money. So that's the struggle, and they were completely tone deaf and they rejected all of our comments. So just FYI, I did make my comments, but they were rejected outright. So I'm not anticipating
And
any
to
great news.
clarify, like those cost drivers that you're saying that the state approves, if I remember correctly, last year, the transportation piece, they approved like a 6% increase on the transportation?
Like 5.8,
Okay.
5.81.
So
yeah.
basically that transportation companies could charge like 5.81% more.
Than
for their
last year's
service.
rate.
Right.
Correct, exactly how it works. Don't mean to bump everybody out before that.
So on that sunny note,
Sorry.
yeah, like, as I said, I'm sure there will be many more discussions during committee of the whole from this point forward about planning for the budget, planning for all contingencies, all that sort of thing. One last quick thing we just wanted to address before then we're going to let have our student rep speak is there's an item on the Buildings and Grounds agenda tonight for Justin Brown to work on building capacity and developing tools that will foster a diverse school community. And we wanted Dr. McDowell and then any of us that wanted to chime in to just give a brief overview of what the plan will be for him.
And so first and foremost, it's important to make sure that we are noting any initiative that school districts are, that our school district is establishing are not being paid out of general funds. We, for the last several years, have been pretty aggressive in pursuing grant dollars so that we were not having to take away from classroom dollars or general fund dollars that were in decline to do some of the important work. And so case in point, the Wellness Center has been completely paid for using a federal grant. Some of the MTSS work, both at the elementary and at the secondary level, has all been funded through grant dollars, with the goal of building a sustainable plan that lasts once the grant funds run out. And so embedded in every grant are professional development and strategic implementation support. And so using some of our grant dollars, we believed that we needed an implementation partner specifically to help address some of the achievement challenges that you heard referenced earlier, some of the cultural challenges that we have historically had within our school district, and to equip our educators and our administrators with additional tools so that we could better serve and support a growing a population of diverse students, both in ability and also in need. And so the DAP is the organization that was selected. There were 5 organizations that submitted a proposal. And so what we were looking for was, did they understand the needs of our particular school district? And so, and in the needs of our school district, were they aware of our faculty, staff, administration, our community being in very different places, and there needing to be a little something for everybody in order to continue these conversations in a productive manner. And so with this consultant, we believe it's important that they come in listening, that they engage our community that is very diverse and has a wide range of need in order to help us build a strategic plan related to how do we appropriately develop a sense of inclusive schools where all students feel welcome and all students feel like they have a place where they belong. That process would start first. And so that would require both school-based and community-based engagement in order for the implementation partner to be able to help us construct a long-term, multi-year plan to address some of the challenges. Paired with that would come targeted professional development. We believe those topics would emerge only after engaging our community. And so that would be the second phase. And then paired with that would be the establishment of a council, of a task force, of groups of individuals at each school to actually help us implement and support the work and hold ourselves accountable to making meaningful progress. And so the consultant was selected based on the merits of their proposal, based on the affordability of their proposal. We saw proposals ranging from $25,000 to $250,000. And so we wanted to make sure that while we're building capacity, we are also not overburdening our faculty and staff who are currently laser focused on filling in gaps, specifically as it relates with the varying performance bands of our students. And so we needed an organization that kind of recognized the continuum of what change looks like and the bandwidth that our school district currently has. And so we believe that this is a nice transition in order to level set and commit to being able to move the work forward, but doing it a little bit differently by engaging our community and really making sure that the areas of focus that we're placing, the training and the capacity is actually being built in the areas of greatest need.
And so when is this work slated to begin?
So our original timeline, we were pretty aggressive. We believe that a lot of the work needed to take place between now and summer. We're going to sit down, pending approval from the board. We'll sit down with the consultant. We will adjust the timeline because we believe that that community engagement piece is important. And so that will extend the timeline. And so we're going to look at when an appropriate start date makes the most sense and then work backwards from there.
And then for kind of those in buildings, in the beginning of this process, what could they kind of expect from this work? Like, what will that look like on the ground for them?
So initially, the only thing we'll be asking schools to do is to participate, provide feedback, help to begin establishing rapport with the implementation partner, and just being honest and truthful about the challenges that are happening at the school level, and hopes, desires about what type of support might be most helpful in order to address those challenges.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. I appreciate the emphasis on listening first, and I think that will be really good. Will the implementation partner also be partnering with some of the other initiatives going on, like, for example, the student voice work that's happening? Will there be any crossover? Because these seem to be aligned initiatives.
So there's a few opportunities that we're actually really excited about. One is the Elevating Student Voice Project. The official title of that group of young people is the Student Voice Action Committee. And you'll hear a little bit more about that during my actual formal report. And so it would be our expectation that the implementation partner works with multiple student groups because they have detailed information that would be most helpful in actually getting it right. Paired with that, we also believe that it's important for us to aggressively push the conversation around inclusion. And so we will be authorizing our special services team to begin engaging in a parallel community process around putting in a strategic action plan to aggressively increase inclusion happening within our school to multiple phases. And so we believe that you can't have a conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, or belonging without that also being one of the core foundations of the plan. And so the student voice groups, the inclusion discussions and groups, paired with this, we believe will strike the right balance and be able to help us move forward.
Before I close this out, anybody else have any questions on this? Go
I
ahead.
do. I think the only thing that I was looking at was the time frame. So I think that you were looking at hiring this company back in November, but we didn't put it on the agenda for that night. I'm not sure why it was tabled, but it was. And then it, is now December. So I'm assuming that they're not going to start any kind of implementation until January, and then it only runs until June. So it says it was for the year, and I just wanted to make sure that we're maximizing on that year in terms of the time frame.
So embedded in the pending awarded proposal, their proposal states a year worth of service, and so we haven't started yet, and so we would be assuming that approval would be a year from the actual start date, not a year from November.
We also asked and made sure too that the funding doesn't end at the end of the school year, so we would be able to extend past because the terms of the grant aren't based on the school year. It's on, I believe, the calendar year.
I have one more question. So in terms of involving the staff and making sure that they have input in all the things, were they involved in the conversations in hiring this company? Did they have any input in that?
That's not how it works. Beth Ann can share with you the RFP process, which is uniquely a district process, and so if you could kind of give the details.
So RFP is basically request for proposal. It's kind of like a bid, but it's one of those instances we publish just like a bid, but proposals come in, and then in accordance with state law, in the body of the bid, we put the scoring criteria. So we normally seat a committee of 3 or more people to review the RFPs when they come in with the scoring rubric, and then the group that gets the highest score wins the RFP, basically is what happened. So in this case, it was Fred, myself, and somebody else in the administrative office, but I forget who the third person was. Their initials are on the, it was Maria in my office. So 3 different people we sit and, so 3 of us, we read the RFP that was published based on the scope of services that was prepared, and then they read the RFP and all other things, price has to be consideration, so obviously that is one of the criteria. That has to be at least one of them. I think we had 3 to 5 criteria in the RFP, so we kind of scored them, and then the highest scoring one wins it.
So is this company to replace the A to Z consulting firm that we had? This is sort of the same thing, right?
So yes, it's more of we've established a foundation. But it's also important to note is that the equity work that we did as a district pre-pandemic looked very different than the equity work that needs to take place now. And so the strategy, the core principles will be similar, but the strategies in order to get there will be dramatically different.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. Will there be any collaboration? I know we've heard from some faculty members several times about the Equity Council that currently exists in the district. Will they be brought in on some of this work, whether it's the listening sessions or you said something about a task force? And I guess two-part question. I also just want to make sure I understand the way you laid out the timeline. So did I understand year one will be engagement from the district and the community, and is it year two then professional development and year three task force, or are these just steps that that the process is going to take?
So these are steps. This is not a multi-year initiative, and so written within the proposal was a year.
Sure.
And so we realized that this work is complex, and that it requires multiple phases.
Okay.
And so this would be phase one. In answer to your first question, out of respect for the process of negotiations, once we reached impasse, there's no additional requests of volunteerism, which is what the historical equity councils have always been. They were always non-compensated roles and responsibilities. We believe that in this new iteration with the new implementation partner, there will be subtle tweaks. It will be an open process to all faculty and staff across the district. And then the establishment of a task force or an implementation team, there would be a new process based on what we learned during the community engagement piece.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, all of that being said, motion to exit committee of the whole.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you for all that discussion. We're going to skip to section 9, the student report, and let Dane tell us what's going on with students right now.
Got it. So not much has happened. Past couple weeks, there have been 2 big sales, one by the French Club and one by the Social Justice Club, to fund a charity to help the children of Gaza. Fall sports finished up, I think, a couple weeks ago as well. Winter sports just started, and other than that, the Wi-Fi not been great for the past couple weeks. It cut out a couple times, as well as the Smart Pass system that shut down earlier today, but that was only for like an hour. But that's all I got.
And then you got reindeer games coming up, right?
We do, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. As always, you are more than welcome to stay, but we also understand it's December and everybody's ready to be done, so if you'd like to head out, that's perfectly fine too. Moving on to section 5, future dates and miscellaneous information. There's lots on there, various concerts, some during the day, the CHS winter choral concerts in the evening. Reindeer games is on that schedule, as well as, I don't know that it's all on here, but madrigals are going to be singing all over the place in the next week or so listen for them as well. Moving on to section 6, routine business, motion to approve the minutes of the November 25th, 2024 regular board meeting.
So moved.
And a second? Is this roll call? All in favor? We are at our first opportunity for public comment. The purpose for this public comment section is to discuss items listed on the agenda. Additional, more general comments may be made later in the meeting. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through appropriate staff members and administrators. The intent of public comment is to give the community the opportunity to provide feedback to the board. We will be actively listening and taking notes so that we can take all that is being said into consideration. If appropriate, clarifying comments may be made at the end of the public comment section. For more detailed responses to concerns, communication may go out later in the week by the appropriate staff members or administrators, or be discussed by the board during future committee meetings. Members of the public are welcome to speak and expected to do so with the utmost sensitivity for everyone in attendance. In fairness to all who wish to speak, there's a strict 5-minute excuse me, didn't update my, paper that I had to print out because I lost it. Last one of the ever, 3-minute time limit per person during public comment. Remember to state your name for the record and address, and Ms. Coleman is going to be keeping time with my phone today instead. So there we go.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Goldberg, music teacher at the Garfield and Tatum Elementary Schools here in Collingswood. I'm here today proudly speaking on behalf of the district music teachers, Ms. Carlson, Mr. Gross, Mr. Hartung, Ms. Introcaso, and Ms. Ludwig, and myself. It is the mission of the Collingswood Public School District's music department to provide every Collingswood student the opportunity to grow through a high-quality, ability-appropriate, universally accessible music education that inspires the continuing study of music. Coming up in January, all 3 elementary after-school music clubs, District Band, District Orchestra, and Sanatonics District Choir celebrate the snowy season in our District Elementary Ensemble Winter Concert. Also, auditions will be held for the high school musical Little Shop of Horrors. Finally, congratulations to the 7 Collingswood students who successfully auditioned and earned a spot in next month's all South Jersey Middle and High School Honors Choirs. For more details on any of these exciting events, please feel free to reach out to your school music teacher. The High School Madrigal Singers, an auditioned extracurricular choir that has been in existence for over 40 years, has been rather busy. They welcomed the season at Collingswood annual tree lighting, lifted the spirits of those most in need at Camden's Cathedral Kitchen, revitalized staff climate at the high school faculty breakfast, and serenaded shoppers at the William P. Tatum Holiday Market. Most recently, the Madrigals were honored with a feature on CBS News. However, they're not done yet. You will soon find the Madrigals on stage at Wednesday's high school winter choral concert, touring the district to sing for every elementary school the following 2 days, and finally, caroling by the clock tower on Haddon Avenue Friday afternoon. Thank you to all the Madrigal singers for making this season bright here in Collingswood. Leading this dedicated ensemble is their dedicated teacher, Miss Kristen Introcaso. Under Ms. Introcaso's direction, Collingswood choirs have performed at the prestigious Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, the Kimmel Center, the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., and more. She has presented at the New Jersey Music Educators Association Conference and has conducted the South Jersey Choral Directors Association Festival. Currently, she is serving as the duly elected president of the South Jersey Choir Directors Association, an organization that supports nearly 100 conductors, singers, and teachers in the area. Collingswood is exceedingly fortunate to have such a distinguished music teacher expert at the forefront of our music department. I am personally grateful to have her as a colleague, a mentor, and a friend. Thank you, Ms. Introcaso, for everything you do, and thank all of you here for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Moving on to Section 8, the Superintendent's Report, Dr. McDowell will present.
Okay. Section 8.01 is the enrollment report. November 2023 enrollment was 2256. Enrollment for November 2024 is 2226, and that is attached. 8.02 and 8.04 are the school safety drill reports and the anti-bullying report. And I have just a few announcements for this evening. First, we would like to publicly congratulate Benjamin Arbach, who was selected as a 2025 ROTC, National ROTC Scholarship recipient. This is a $180,000 scholarship with a national process that is extensive. It involves a thorough interview and is extremely competitive. And so out of 132 applicants across the country, Ben was one of 21 recipients for this prestigious award. And so we just wanted to publicly say that we're extremely proud of Ben and everything that he will accomplish in the future. And so, mentioned earlier during our committee of the whole, we talked about the elevating student voice work. And so all of this work is aligned with our strategic plan to increase opportunities for student influence on overall school life. And so this summer we began working with a diverse group of student leaders on this project, and it seeks to build capacity for high school students to participate in comprehensive school reform. And so in partnership with their advisors, the Student Voice Action Committee has identified discrimination, lack of communication, and limited accommodations as primary areas of concern. And so the purpose of their committee is to develop a greater sense of belonging on campus, to improve school climate and culture, and to help work with the adults in the building to establish support for more engaging classroom learning. And so last week we met with this group of students, and we're extremely excited about what they have planned to improve their school. So once they have finalized their goals and strategies, additional communication will follow. And we would just like to thank the co-advisors as well as the program leads for supporting student leadership on campus. As part of our continuing effort to continue elevating student voice this month, we also met with diverse groups of students in the middle and the high school level. Questions included, but were not limited to, things that they liked, did not like about school, what changes in their experience would they like to see, what additional programs or opportunities would they find value or interest in, how would they compare school culture this year to last year, and how can we ramp up our college and career readiness preparation efforts. And so in January, we will host elementary student focus groups and meet with available faculty and staff at all schools. And so we're actively seeking feedback on how the school year is progressing and what we can do to provide additional support. Once all the feedback is received, we will be sharing that feedback publicly in future updates. And so we just wanted to also bring additional attention to last week there was Inclusive Schools Week. And so there was a whole host of activities that took place across every campus. We'd like to thank CPAG as well as our special services team for putting all of this together. Our goal is to make all of our school communities more inclusive, with Inclusive Schools Week seeking to celebrate the progress of our schools in educating an increasingly diverse population, acknowledging the hard work and commitment of schools and communities in creating opportunities for young people regardless of ability, gender, ethnicity, language, or health status, encouraging reflection on how culture, policies, and practice can promote more inclusive opportunities for all young people, and then promoting actions to increase the capacity of our schools and community to meet the needs of all learners. And so we're just extremely proud and thankful for all of the schools and the volunteers in each of our schools who support this important work. And then we will be using the work that CPAG and Special Services has been pursuing for the last 2 to 2.5 years to move to the next level. We believe that more definitive action with goals and metrics is appropriate, and we will be starting that engagement work in January. We'd also like to thank the Interact Club and Student Council for their community service. Both of these student groups, they made 250 sandwiches to support the mission of Cathedral Kitchen, Camden's largest emergency food provider, serving more than 100,000 meals per year. And so what we've seen time and time again is the commitment of the young people in this district to be able to give back to the community, specifically those that are in need. And we just wanted to bring lots of positive attention to our students. In addition, we would like to mention the important work that's taking place at our middle school through their food pantry, which was highlighted last week on CBS News. Our middle school staff and students continue to go above and beyond to also support the needs of the community. And so we would like to give special recognition to Ms. Nieschner and all the student volunteers at the middle school for also leading this important work as well. And so our schools are all engaged in this week in winter fun, so as we close out the 2025 school year. And so students will be singing on the steps of their schools. Some students will be spreading holiday cheer in the town center. Our youngest learners are actually learning new songs after their heroes. And so it was important to share with some of our high school students last week, specifically our senior leaders, is they were talking about how excited they were to be able to provide mentorship and support at all of our elementary schools. And so I shared with them how jazzed the elementary students were because they look at high school students as the cool big kids. And so every time I'm on campus, they talk about how positive this experience is. And so we want to continually bring attention to that of our students. Some students are celebrating with flannel and fuzzy socks. Others are designing handcrafted cards to send to soldiers overseas. Others are participating in fundraisers to show appreciation for our first responders. And as we heard from our student representative, there will be a host of winter festivities and activities with reindeer games taking place later this week. We'd also like to, now I am not as eloquent, I do not have the radio voice that Mr. Goldberg has, but I would like to give a plug to the high school winter concert again on Wednesday at 7 o'clock in the auditorium. It is free. Please come out to hear the Songbirds of Collingswood give their performance. Our Wellness Center is currently supporting mental health screenings. And so families will be able to go to the parent portal for important messages about our Wellness Center and no-cost mental health screenings for young people in grades 7 through 12. And so there are forms that are located with the goal of the screener to help identify students who may be in need of additional services as they relate to school connectedness. In addition, coming through our Wellness Center is pre-employment transition services. And so we are partnering with National Employment 360 to provide opportunities for students ages 14 to 21. The Wellness to Work program is a unique pre-employment training program to help equip students with vocational skills, job placement, self-advocacy, social skills, and other qualities necessary for independent living. Students that are 14 to 21 with varying learning disabilities, mental health diagnoses and challenges, or medical conditions can receive direct instruction as well as ongoing support. We'll be sending that information out with questions and more information. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. Moving on to Section 10, the Business Administrator Board Secretary Report. Ms. Coleman will present.
Item 10.01 is a listing of your November monthly budget transfers. 10.02 are your November financial statements. 10.03 is a listing of your student activity cash reports. I do not have a food service financial statement at this time, so I will present it in January. 10.05 is a listing of the purchase orders that have been issued for the month of December. And in 10.06 is a listing of the warrants that will be paid tomorrow morning pending approval tonight.
Thank you. Section 11, the Buildings, Grounds, and Finance Committee. Mr. Craig will present.
Thank you. The Finance, Buildings, and Grounds Committee reviews all financial statements, purchase orders, and warrants on a monthly basis. The committee also reviews and approves all contracts with outside service providers and oversees all maintenance and capital improvement projects district-wide. We're seeking approval on the following items. 11.2 to 11.9 is the Board Secretary's report as presented. I guess we will take out the food service report from that. Thank you. 11.10, using health and wellness grant funds for after-school services through the Resilience Resource Center to support LGBTQIA+ students through an after-school program. 11.11 is accepting a $5,000 honorarium from the, can't read my own handwriting, Association of Nurses. Thank you to our school nurses for our school nurse team for doing the work to secure these funds. 11.12, the Justin L. Brown Diversity Awareness Program RFP response to our building capacity grants RFP. 11.13, shared service agreement with Gloucester City. 11.14 is amending the culture and climate grant funds to properly reflect where spending is going for staffing. 11.15 through 11.18 are use of facility requests, first for a staff wellness health fair, and then the 76ers basketball camp, and then finally 2 Odyssey of the Mind events. So seeking approval for items 11.2 to 11.18.
Thank you. Motion to approve said items?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Severino,
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sharon Celia,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Tavy,
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus,
Yes.
Mrs. Caden.
Yes. Section 12, the Curriculum Committee, Mr. Chu will present.
The Curriculum Committee oversees and approves the district curriculum and assessment programs, as well as field trips, home instruction, co-curricular programs, and the school calendar. Up for approval tonight, items 12.02 and 12.03 are middle school and high school field trips. And I guess on the high school field trips, that does include the Madrigals in April going to Carnegie Hall. So kind of to add on to that theme. 12.04 is an overnight field trip for the high school TV production and art students to go out to LA in February. Then there are 12.05 and 12.06 are out-of-district and home instruction placements for some students. And so for tonight, we're seeking approval for items 12.02 through 12.06.
Thank you. Motion to approve said items.
So moved.
And a second? Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mrs. Maya,
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Severino,
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sharon Celia,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes.
Mr. Tavy,
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus,
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mrs. Caden.
Yes. Section 13, the Personnel Committee, Ms. Sheridan Celia will present.
Good evening. The Personnel Committee reviews all recommendations for teaching and staff employment, considers co-curricular employment, and considers all professional development opportunities for staff members. Rather light agenda for this meeting, and I'm seeking approval for agenda items 13.02 through 13.20. Items 13.02 through 13.04 are leaves of absence. 13.05 is the appointment of a social worker. At 13.06, the appointment of a long-term elementary resource teacher. At item 13.07, we're extending the contract for a French teacher. 13.08 is another social worker appointment. At 13.09 and 13.10 are the appointment of 2 part-time temporary substitutes for PE. 13.11 is an elementary long-term sub, as well as 13.12. At 13.13 is the appointment of a part-time secondary MTSS coach. We have a revision at 13.14 to the SHARP rates for after-school programs that we approved last month. There was a minor typo. 13.15 is athletic event personnel. 13.16 and 13.17 are 13.16 is are revisions to the athletic coach at the high school, coaches at the high school level. At 13.17 is non-athletic EDP stipends. 13.18 is a student practicum placement of a student from Rowan College. 13.19 is a list of new substitutes and appointment of substitutes and tutors. And we have a few items on the travel expense form at 13.20. So this evening, I'm seeking approval of agenda items 13.02 through 13.20.
Thank you. Motion to approve said items.
So moved.
And a second? Questions or comments from board members?
I have a question about 13.13, Mr. McLean, who's coming back as a part-time secondary MTSS coach. If I remember correctly, Mr. McLean was a high school teacher, correct, who left a couple years ago, and then he's...
He's middle and high school. He left to, he got a doctoral fellowship, and in order to accept the fellowship to get his PhD, he had to remove his full-time employment. And so, but he has hours that he's been approved through his doctoral program, and he wants to work with us.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
I have a question about that same item. Is that a pre-existing position, or was that an open position?
It's an open. And so we originally pursued a full-time position. We were not able to fill it full-time, and so we gave the team the ability, if you could bring in somebody part-time to help build capacity so the students are receiving the services, that was another opportunity, and they were able to fill it with a part-time person.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Severino?
Yes.
Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes, with abstentions where necessary.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes, except we're required to abstain.
Mrs. Caden?
Yes. Section 14, the Culture, Climate, and Policy Committee, Ms. Zeltzer will present.
The Culture, Climate, and Policy Committee reviews all updates and changes of district policies and regulations. Very brief agenda this month. We have one policy up for a second read. That's 9181. As discussed last month, no major revisions to this, just some language and some regulations around TB testing. That's 14.02, and 14.03
Is actually going to be tabled.
yes, that's what I was just going to say, is, was added fairly late to the agenda, so we're going to table it until next month when we can have a little more discussion about it. So for right now, I am seeking approval for item 14.02.
So do we need to do a motion to table, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, motion to table 14.03.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
So then motion to approve item 14.02.
So moved.
And second. Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Severino? Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Mrs. Caden?
Yes. Section 15, miscellaneous, just one item, 15.01, is the recommendation to approve the anti-bullying report presented during the November 2024 board meeting. So, motion to approve item 15.01.
So moved.
And a second? Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Maya?
Yes.
Mrs. Mikulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Severino? Mrs. Seltzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheridan Celia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman? Mr. Tavy?
Yes.
Mr. Dilkus?
Yes.
Mrs. Caden?
Yes. Section 16 is our second opportunity for public comment. This is for any general comments. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through appropriate staff members and administrators. We will be listening and taking notes, and if appropriate, clarifying comments will be made at the end of the public comment section or in more detail later this week or discussed at a future meeting. In fairness to all who wish to speak, there is a 3-minute time limit per person. Please remember to state your name and address for the record.
Thank you very much. All right. Good evening, everyone. Rebecca Muller, 509 Dwight Avenue, community member and secondary MTSS coach funded by the Wellness Center. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible contributions of Kristen O. Lexi and the lasting impact she has made on our students, staff, and community. Kristen is a tireless advocate for student wellness and a skilled leader in mental health initiatives. Her resignation represents a tremendous loss to the district, given her depth of knowledge, community connections, district partnerships, collegiality, and unwavering dedication to student wellness. She is an incredible teammate who makes sure we all feel seen and are well fed before all meetings. Over the last 14 years, Kristen has played a transformative role in shaping our mental health initiatives in the district. In a recent conversation, she shared with me that she had envisioned beginning and ending her career in this district, a testament to her belief in the importance of her work and the difficulty in the decision to resign. It is important to know that if the district hires someone to fill this role, the next person may face challenges due to the position's uncertain long-term funding, as it is a grant-based position. Kristen has built a strong foundation, but additional structures and transparency are necessary to ensure the continued growth and effective support for our students. Her journey with Collingswood has been remarkable, and tonight I hope I am given enough time to highlight all of her accomplishments. During the 2010-2011 school year, Kristen Alexi interned in Collingswood, where she provided one-to-one counseling at the middle school, SEL instruction at Zane North, and support for the Twilight program, which included counseling, team building, and pre-vocational training, a program that, to my knowledge, has most recently been eliminated. At that time, she was the only social work intern and worked closely with her incredible mentor, Deb Vesper, whose supervisor position was eliminated at the end of last year, causing yet another significant loss to our counseling and special education departments, and loss of a staff member who dedicated over 15 years to Collingswood. In February 2020, Kristen was the elementary counseling coordinator, a position funded by the mental health referendum, championed by Scott Oswald and Beth Whitehouse. She developed a mental health support model for all 5 elementary schools and transitioned it to the virtual space during COVID. This was essential in supporting the transition back to in-person learning. As an elementary school counselor, she collaborated with an in-staff talented team to design and implement an SEL curriculum. To give back, Kristen launched the social work internship program, starting with 3 interns in 2020 and expanding it significantly in the subsequent years with a total of 7 at the end of 2023. To support staff, the Kindness Crew was created during virtual learning to build staff morale and foster a sense of community. As volunteers were lost at each building, Kristen continues to purchase prizes out of her own pocket. In January 2023, Kristen became my teammate as the Wellness Center Director. Over the past year and a half, we have witnessed tremendous growth in student engagement with mental health resources, and Kristen is the one that we can thank for the Wellness to Work program spoken about tonight. Kristen, on the behalf of the entire community, thank you for your passion, vision, and unwavering dedication. You, my friend, I see you out there, along with Deb and Shannon, will be greatly missed.
Dan Smith, 225 Lincoln Avenue. I've been following the boroughs, the commissioners' meetings lately, and last couple of months, it seems like whenever the topic of the schools comes up, the mayor seems to have this like consistent refrain where he says, "I reached out to the district and they never got back to me." So my biggest question here is just like, how true is that? And if so, why? And the idea of it worries me. We have a lot of fiscal challenges facing us, obviously. The borough might have more financial flexibility to fill some of the gaps in enrichment programs that might address some of the district's performance gaps. And if the district really doesn't have good communication and coordination with the borough, that's something I just really think is worth fixing. So, thank you.
My name is Lori Ludwig, and I'm a music teacher in Collingswood Schools. My job responsibilities this year have me teaching every grade from kindergarten through high school. But I'm not here to talk about the rigors of my position today. This message is really for the parents and guardians of the students in our district. Thank you for the work you are doing raising your children. They are sweet, fun-loving, and frequently filled with a spirit of helpfulness. They keep me going. As teachers, we all walk through our own journeys through life, and although every student that we teach will one day leave us, in that time we have together, your children do more for us than you can imagine. From the kindergartner who held my hand on the first day of school and calmed my anxiety as much as I was calming theirs, to the middle schooler whose goofy antics made me laugh last week before we got back down to business, to the high schooler who selflessly offers to help clean the band room on a regular basis. My students lift me up, and they propel me forward. Last week was a particularly hard week for me. Any band parent in this district can easily infer as to why. I want you to know that your children were the guiding sentinels that got me through it, as children in this district do for other teachers experiencing hardship of any kind in this district every day. Your children are wonderful people. As you settle in for a long winter break, know this: your children's teachers love your children. They are the reason we get out of bed in the morning and come to work, even when it's hard to do so. We are grateful that you share them with us. Thank you again for the gift of getting to teach your children, and I would like to wish you and your families a safe and joyful winter break.
I'm Alexandra Guido-Smith, 311 Lakeview Drive. First, I just want to say how wonderful it was to have the conference with my child's first grade teacher. I had expected, I've been giving the dibbles for, no joke, 20 some years. I was really excited about getting that report. I was not expecting to have the progress monitoring included in that. And it wasn't just one, there were 3 progress monitoring hits from the time that that benchmark was given. And I, as an interventionist, I am so pleased to see that roll out, to see that be district-wide, and to see it that it was done so efficiently. I'm really pleased. And that said, I can see that there is growth for that. We had a conversation about nonsense words. Why do they test them? What's the point in it? And I feel very strongly and passionately about it. I teach my kid nonsense words because you can't read dyslexic if you can't, decode LEX means Lex and it's a closed syllable. So, but I'm really very, very pleased to see that and hopeful for the middle of the year benchmark and where it's going to come down the line. And also, I would really love to see district-wide data. We don't see testing measures until 3rd grade, but if you can tell me how a kindergartner can do first sound fluency, any interventionist can tell you, can project what's going to happen from there out. So I think that would be really helpful information to have. I would love to see it. I think that's wonderful. And also, I would like to say thank you to Miss Sheridan Celia, Miss Severino, and Miss Caden. I think that whatever happens moving forward, that under your tenure, the town of Collingswood has been made aware of some really stark truths about the way that our schools are structured, and whether or not we do anything about it, it won't be because people don't know. And so, you won't be sitting here anymore, but there is an obligation, I would say it's a moral obligation, to do something about it. And for that, as the community, I am very grateful for that. So, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cato Lachlan. I'm a resident of West Collingswood, 702 Collings if you need the address.
Ms. O'Loughlin, I understand. Can you
Do you want me to use this?
Because of the people watching at
Sure,
home.
absolutely. This is why I didn't want to mess with it, though. Thank you. I'm a people manager. Thank you. Anyway, I've lived in Collingswood for nearly 15 years with my spouse. Our now 13-year-old child attended Thomas Sharp Elementary, where I served as a PTA officer, a room mother, and a volunteer librarian, because the school district did not provide our children with that service. Prior to my coordination of pilot that with Sharp's administrators, there was no library service offered at any district elementary school at all. I have many concerns about this board and this superintendent. This board has voted on raises for multiple administrators while refusing to negotiate in good faith with our teachers, who have been working nearly the entire length of the school year without a valid contract. During this same time, same board has also hired multiple assistants for the superintendent. Nationally, we inhabit a space where we have too many managers, many of whom are superfluous, and most of whom are not building the relationships necessary with those who they manage to effectively do their jobs. I have concerns about this board's repeated attempts to silence dissenting members over a plan that is substantially similar to multiple proposals over several years that have been overwhelmingly rejected by the voters of this borough. I'm also very concerned about this board's attempts to censure one of its own members over frustrations that our school administrators are inaccessible and uncommunicative with parents, which many parents can attest to, myself included. Over the course of this board's and superintendent's tenures, we have seen increasingly degrading conditions at our high school, middle school complex. Children are wasting valuable educational time in study halls. Children are being assaulted by other children on their walks home from school. And this board and superintendent insist on blaming past administrations instead of taking responsibility and fixing the situation. A significant number of peer parents that I know have decided or are currently deciding whether they're going to send their children out of this school district for their high school education. Thank you for your time. I don't attend these meetings frequently because I don't have room in my schedule for it. I appreciate that all of you do. Thank you so much.
So the only clarifying comment that I wanted to make was to Mr. Smith's question. The district has attempted to communicate with the borough often, and I would say the communication issues are not ones that lie with the district, and the will to work together is not one that lies with the district. So hopefully things will change and that will improve as time goes on. Does either Ms. Howell-Turner or Dr. McDowell, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we close?
Yes, I wanted to speak, and so I'm not going to stand on my soapbox about the challenges that we have in our society, in our community, but what I will speak to is direct feedback from what I have personally observed and direct feedback from our students who are the recipients of the decisions of this board, the recipient of the decisions of our teachers, our administrators, and their families. And so when I spoke with the students last week, both middle and high school, very diverse mix of students, students were happy and hopeful. Students talked about how, from a cultural perspective, they see that there are significant improvements in terms of school culture this year compared to last year and the year before. They see that students are more engaged in their learning. Students who want to challenge themselves believed there are opportunities for them to do so, but they also acknowledged that some of their classmates were not as engaged and were in need of additional motivation, and that was something that they were hoping that we would work collaboratively with them in order to do. In terms of safety, we have dramatically increased the degree of supervision and support and access on our secondary campus, and we have seen a dramatic decrease in disruptive behavior and negative experiences and student altercations, and we will continue to place great emphasis on that. We established an Office of Culture and Climate in order to make sure that we were putting appropriate attention as it relates with this, but I will say that school culture is the embodiment of the organizations in which we serve. And so when we look at our middle school, when we look at our high school, there are bright spots that happen every single day in both of those campuses. and our students are the individuals who will be able to appropriately testify to that. But another piece I would also encourage is individuals who have the desire to observe or see what's happening in our middle school and high school. There's an open invitation. Please reach out to my office. On a regular basis, I bring in individuals from the outside in order to see all the great things that are taking place at our secondary campus, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Okay, on that note, section 17, motion to adjourn oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to thank my fellow board members, Dr. McDowell, Beth Ann, and Meredith, for persisting in the work of moving towards a more equitable and quality school district. A special recognition to Reagan, who has withstood countless personal attacks in her role as a volunteer. I would also like to thank my family who has supported me as I have journeyed through my 6 years as a volunteer on this board. And just one other note, as I leave, I know there is much work to be done. One area that is most striking to me is the discrepancy in test scores and graduation rates amongst our Black and brown students and our special education population. These numbers were presented to me as an incoming board member and were discussed as nothing new. Those numbers represent our children in our community. Those numbers are not the sole responsibility of one superintendent. We have had 2 that I have served with. Those numbers are not the sole responsibility of this board. There have been countless board changes over the years. Those numbers are not the sole responsibility of specific teachers. Teachers, so many of whom work tirelessly each day, caring and worrying and working for kids that are not their own, have changed over the years. Collingswood, if we are what we say we are, a small town where we care for each other, community-minded, a place where we have a responsibility to each child in our school, then we cannot be okay with this or simply pay lip service. Those data points, those kids are all our responsibilities, and finding a solution to an issue that has become baked into our district and perhaps our town rests with all of us. Otherwise, we have to look at those numbers year after year, perhaps decade after decade, numbers that we look at and say, yes, that is who we are, and we are fine with it.
Thank you, Mary. Motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Have a great holiday season.